Hi there! Welcome to the next video about sugar and the impact on your health. Today I'm super excited to be here together with Ling Na Cheng. So Ling Na is a Chinese medicine practitioner, and I'm super excited to hear about her experience of sugar and our health. Before we start, could you please share a little more about who you are and what you do?
Sure, I would love to. First of all, I am Chinese, but I was born and raised in Japan. And then I have lived for some time in the United States, starting from Los Angeles all the way to New York, in New York City for 10 years. And then I moved here, met my Swiss husband, and I've been living here for over 20 years. Now, in between, I have been to California, namely near Berkeley, to study Chinese medicine because I've been thinking for many years that I wanted to study Chinese medicine. So there it is. I went to Berkeley area to study Chinese medicine, and I have my practice also in Berkeley area. And then I came back here 10 years ago and opened my practice here in Rapperswil, Jona. So I'm very excited to share with Sabine today about the sugar impact on the health from the point of view of Chinese medicine.
Great. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction.
You're welcome.
And Ms. Cheng, I'm super excited to hear from a professional point of view what has been for you the experience with sugar and the impact on our health.
Yes. From Chinese medicine perspective, we say that you feel on the pulse, because in Chinese medicine we take the pulse diagnosis of the different organs on our body, and you can feel particularly on the stomach position that there is fire. And fire actually translates to inflammation. And also with people, for example, with joint pains, I noticed that there's also some heat, not on the stomach, but from other organs, which has an impact at the end. The inflammation of the sugar has an impact also on the joints. So from that perspective, and also as well as with skin conditions, because skin conditions in general has to do with heat. And so by also feeling the heat pulse on the stomach position, I tell normally the patients to really reduce or cut down a lot on the sugar, as well as other foods, for example, spicy foods that also create sugar in terms of for the skin conditions. Now, what really more interesting is because I have been studying a lot and researching a lot about brain health, what the sugar does for the brain health, and namely Alzheimer and dementia, which is today in the world, about 45 million people have this condition, and they predict by 2015 it's going to be 300% more. And in fact, even also in Switzerland, it's going to go up to 300% more by 2050. In other words, in the world, there will be about 135 million people going to have dementia and Alzheimer. And in fact, Alzheimer is considered the type 3 diabetes because the sugar is very toxic for the brain. And I'm talking about not just a little bit of sugar, we're talking about a lot more intake of sugar. And why toxic? Because they say that any neurodegenerative diseases are because of inflammation in the brain, and sugar is a big inflammatory actor in the brain. So therefore, it's very important to cut down on the sugar from that point of view. In fact, also with Alzheimer or any other neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's, the symptoms can be only seen 30 to 40 years later. So therefore, it's really important from the early ages, even from the 20s, to already start to really watch the sugar content. And it's only not only sugar, it's also combined with any other foods that really makes it even more toxic to the brain. So now, how does this really work? Is that, about diabetes is insulin resistance. In other words, the pancreas produces insulin, which is a hormone to try to manage the sugar in your bloodstream, because the bloodstream can only take only a little bit amount of blood sugar, which turns into glucose. And when there's too much, the insulin is just absolutely overwhelmed, that they cannot produce as much, and the pancreas gets really tired. Then the bloodstream cannot anymore accept any more insulin, and therefore there's a buildup of sugar in the blood vessels. And what that does, is that actually it makes the blood in itself, the content, more sticky. And what does that mean? That means that it will create more hypertension. Just imagine, usually the blood circulation, the heart pumps about a minute, the entire blood vessels in your entire body in 1 minute. And when it gets really thick, it slows down and therefore builds up and creates blood pressure that goes up. And what happens with high blood pressure? It really makes the blood flow and the oxygen less to the brain. And what is the conclusion of that? Is that the brain cells are not getting enough nutrition, and therefore they start to die with age. So therefore it's just so important that we really balance and not to have too much sugar. So that's...
Wow,
yeah.
that is so fascinating. And I think for our audience that's very, very interesting to hear, because it's what you mentioned now, the type 3 diabetes. It's
Yes.
something hardly anyone has heard of.
Yes.
And it's really, thank you so much for explaining how exactly that works and how that creates actually this nutrient deficiency in our brain.
Yes, yes.
That's very fascinating.
Yeah, it's actually rather frightening when one can just imagine that they start to have holes in the brain cells because they're just not, the brain cells are dying because they're lacking in oxygen and blood circulation into the brain. Yeah, yeah.
Incredible.
And also just one last thing I want to mention about is that what happens also with a high amount of sugar in the bloodstream in terms of with the brain cells is that the nerve cells, they end in between the two nerve cells, they communicate through neurotransmitters. Now, the ends of the nerve cells need to be very fluid and soft. When there is too much sugar in the bloodstream, what happens is that it creates a crust on the ending of the nerve cells. In other words, there won't be much communication between the nerve cells, and this is also really a very big problem, meaning that there's not enough communication between the nerve cells, and so there can be emotional impact, and as well as also Parkinson's, for example. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
You also mentioned before that even leads, or it's even combined also with depression and anxiety.
Yes.
Can you explain more about that?
Absolutely. Because what happens is when you are really highly stressed, and of course most of the time people the tendency is to eat more sugar when they're very highly stressed. What happens is that stress in itself creates a lot of heat already, and the heat tends to rise up to the head, and then on top of that you have sugar. And this fire makes you feel more anxious and very restless. I have people who are coming as patients that have sugar, and plus on top of that to have coffee, and they just cannot come down at nighttime because there's so much heat that they feel very restless. They would have a very bad quality of sleep, a lot of dreams, or can't even fall asleep. And so mind is running all the time. And if that happens for a certain amount of time, then causes more anxious, more stress, and they tend to eat more sugar and more coffee. And you can just imagine the scenario down the line. Is so much inflammation in your system. Yeah.
Incredible.
And that can also create constipation. That can also create leaky gut, because a leaky gut, one of the reasons is coming from too much sugar. Sugar is creating heat in the intestine, and aside from constipation is also creating more inflammation, and then after that it has an effect on your brain.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And I can imagine how detrimental that is to our health, because we already live in such a stressful environment at the moment, with stressful jobs, stress in terms of toxins in our household products, beauty care products.
Yes, all around, an environmental toxins. So it's just really very important to watch the sugar, the amount of sugar one consumes, especially with today's lifestyle. And particularly we're not moving enough, right? And the movement is also really, really important to create more new brain cells. That has been the recent researchers have said that with movement that it creates more new brain cells. But and also aerate your whole blood system.
Mhm.
So it's just very important also the exercise as well. Yeah.
That's a great tip actually,
Yeah.
next. And also the perfect for me to introduce the next question.
Yes.
If you have one or two practical tips other than exercise
Mhm.
for our audience that
Mhm.
they can instantly implement in their daily lifestyle.
One thing what one can do is, because you think of blood sugar as being a fuel for your brain, in fact, even a better fuel and a cleaner fuel for your brain is a good fat diet. So I would really recommend to go more to the good fat diet, and in fact, for example, avocado, salmon, as an example, this will keep you not hungry for a longer period of time than having some sugary foods. And on top of that, as I said, it's a much cleaner fuel, and the brain is much happier using the good fat diet as a sense of fuel, and it makes one feel even happier with the good fat. So that was
That's
my
a
really,
great-
yeah.
Yes, that's a great tip. And thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Also because we've also found with our clients that the more good fats they eat, the more time they actually are not hungry.
Yes.
So they don't reach out to just easy, convenient, very high sugary snacks.
Yes.
And so that's actually very good to keep your blood sugar
Yeah,
level stable as well.
Absolutely. And then plus you have the omega-3, the EPA and DHA. This is an fish oil, because this is only not good for the brain. It also makes you feel happier.
Mhm.
It's actually an antidepressant,
Mhm.
and also it heals the gut lining. And for those who are leaky gut or very sensitive to foods, omega-3 plays a huge role not only for the brain health but the overall well-being. In fact, the DHA, part of the fish oil, 80% of the brain is made of DHA, so it's really
Okay.
important as well. Yeah.
That's interesting to know, and also it's a great anti-inflammatory
Absolutely,
substance.
absolutely.
And those I found it so interesting because most of the clients we work with, they
Yeah.
still believe that fat makes you fat.
Mm-hmm.
And I think actually also during this Sugar Awareness Week, we really share more about why that was a myth.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, you don't need any bad fats from fried foods, etc.
Yeah,
But these good fats that you mentioned are really, really beneficial to our health.
absolutely.
And also to deal with the sugar cravings. So
Yeah, exactly.
big win-win.
Yeah, big win-win, because in fact, it's the sugar that creates more fat on our body. And this good fat does not create any fat on your body. So this is really a big thing to take home, yeah, to really realize that. Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're
Linda.
welcome.
Is there any way our audience can connect with you?
Yes, absolutely. You can reach me through my website, which I think that Sabine is going to provide the information. And if you have any questions, I'm very happy to answer.
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.
Bye.